Welcome to the debate. Today we are stepping onto what I can only describe as the edge of a cliff, linguistically speaking. We generally accept that language is a human invention, right? A messy, evolving toolkit we use to describe the world. But what if that view is backwards? What if language isn't just a label we slap onto reality, but more like a fossil record of a reality that precedes us?
And when you say a fossil record, let's be very clear about what you're putting on the table here. You are suggesting that three completely distinct systems, separated by thousands of miles, different language families, thousands of years, are somehow conspiring to tell the exact same theological story.
That is precisely the claim. We're looking at the middle voice in ancient Greek, a verb form that isn't active or passive. We are tracing how that very grammatical structure mirrors the Hebrew concept of oneness, and, incredibly, how it physically shows up in the stroke count of the Japanese character for love.
Which is where I have to plant my flag. I'm here to represent the view of, let's call it linguistic evolution. Languages are almost biological. They drift, they mutate, they borrow. So finding a pattern across Greek, Hebrew, and Japanese is fascinating, I'll grant you. But I suspect we're looking at a classic case of aggressive pattern recognition, apophenia, rather than some kind of divine blueprint.
A fair skepticism. My position, based on the source material, is that this is an ontological inheritance. I'm arguing that the specific alignment of these systems points to an intentional design, suggesting that languages were, in a way, prepared to carry a specific truth, that love is a self-sustaining, interior act of being.
And I argue that human beings share a common neurology, a common experience of the world. We all feel love internally. We all, count on our fingers. It feels almost inevitable that if you sift through enough phonemes and logograms, you'll find coincidences that look like architecture. But okay, I'm ready to be convinced. Where do we start?
We have to start with the logic of the middle voice. This is the foundational concept we need to grasp before we get to the math or the Japanese characters. Most of our listeners are comfortable with English grammar, which is fundamentally binary. We have the active voice. I hit the ball. The action leaves me and impacts the object.
Right, the subject is the doer. It's a transaction. I push, the world moves.
Then we have the passive voice. I was hit by the ball. The action comes from outside and lands on me. The subject is the receiver.
Doer or done to. Cause or effect. It's a very Newtonian way of looking at the world. It's vector physics applied to sentences.
Exactly. But ancient Greek, and by inheritance, modern Greek, has a third toggle on the dashboard. The middle voice. This is a grammatical space where the subject acts, but the action, it curbs back. It doesn't leave the subject to hit an object, nor does it come from outside. The subject is simultaneously the agent and the one affected.
So it's reflexive, like I wash myself?
It includes reflexivity, yes, but it's deeper than that. It's an assertion of where the event takes place. The source material highlights the word eramai. It's usually translated as I desire or I am in love. But strictly speaking, in the middle voice, it implies I am the site of this love. The longing isn't something I do to you, nor is it something you force on me. It is happening inside me as a condition of my being.
Okay, I follow the grammar. The middle voice encodes the subject as the participant. It creates what the text calls a closed loop. But why is this theologically significant? Why isn't this just a quirk of syntax? Languages have all sorts of weird features.
Because of the specific suffix it uses and what that suffix gets attached to. The source text points to the ending I, alpha iota. This is the marker of that interiority. And here is the insight that changes everything. When you look at the Greek verb ima, I am, it uses the same middle voice ending.
I am is middle voice?
Yes. Think about the implications of that. To say I am in Greek is not just a statement of fact or location. Grammatically, it is a statement that existence is a self-generated interior process. It implies that my being curves back on itself. It encodes what theologians call aseity, existence that depends on nothing outside itself.
That is an elegant interpretation. Aseity is a heavy theological concept. self-existence, the uncaused cause. But I have to inject some linguistic conservatism here. You are putting a tremendous amount of weight on that suffix, on I. We need to remember that languages, they sediment, they get messy.
How so?
Well, grammatical forms often survive simply because they're useful or even just out of habit, not because they're carrying some secret philosophical payload. Just because I ends in I doesn't mean every Greek speaker is contemplating the metaphysics of self-existence when they, buy bread. It might just be that the language evolved that way and it got stuck.
But does the speaker's awareness change the structure's reality? I mean, whether I understand the engineering of a bridge or not, the arch still holds the weight. The argument here that the language itself preserves the metaphysics, regardless of the speaker. It's a vessel.
But we also have to talk about phonology. You're building a case on this sound, I. In classical Greek, around Plato's time, that sounded like the I in aisle. But languages drift. In modern Greek, emai is pronounced with a short E sound. If the pronunciation changes over 2,000 years, does this ontological inheritance you're talking about just dissolve?
That's a valid challenge. The sound shifts, yes. But the text argues that languages do not rupture, they sediment. The grammatical skeleton remains intact. A modern Greek speaker uses emai dozens of times a day. They are still using the middle voice structure to define their existence, even if the vowel sound is softened. The logic of the language is conservative. It preserves the structure of self-contained being, even when the surface paint chips away.
I'll grant you that this skeleton persists. And I'll admit, the idea that being is grammatically structured as a self-sustaining loop is profound. It aligns with the idea of consciousness. I am aware that I am aware. It's a feedback loop.
Precisely. And this isn't just abstract philosophy. The New Testament writers who were operating in this Greek ecosystem leveraged this structure specifically. Look at how the Gospel of John describes the relationship between the divine and the human. It uses the word menetai, abides.
He abides in me and I in him.
Menetai is middle voice. It ends in I.
Meaning, it's not a visitation.
Exactly. It's not God visiting you like a house guest, where the action comes from outside. That would be passive. And it's not you forcing God to stay. That would be active. The grammar insists that this abiding is an interior condition. It's a state generated from within the subject. It's organic. Or take the word chiromai, rejoice.
In English, joy is usually reactive. I won the lottery, so I am happy. Cause and effect.
That's the binary trap. But the Greek command to rejoice uses the middle voice. It implies that joy is a state you enter into, a self-sustaining fire that generates its own heat, independent of external circumstances. You don't get joy, you become the site where joy happens.
I see the distinction. It's the difference between I am media happy by X and I generate joy within myself. And I will concede that is a powerful psychological tool. If you believe your joy is a middle voice action, you are less dependent on the world treating you well. You become the generator.
And that psychological tool is embedded right there in the grammar. Now, the essay draws a fascinating parallel to Hebrew here. And I know what you're going to say, totally different language family.
Afro-Asiatic versus Indo-European zero relation.
Agreed. But Hebrew has the hit pale binyan, a verb stem that functions almost exactly like the Greek middle voice. It modifies the root to indicate action performed by the subject upon the self.
Right, but this is where I start to see parallel evolution rather than divine architecture. I mean, think about it biologically. Humans all over the world have internal experiences. We have emotions, bodily sensations, self-reflection. It makes perfect sense that different language families would independently evolve grammatical tools to describe doing things to oneself. Finding a reflexive stem in Hebrew and a reflexive voice in Greek isn't a theological conspiracy, it's just linguistic utility. We have hands, so we invent gloves. We have interior feelings, so we invent reflexive verbs.
If it were just a utility, I might agree. If we were just talking about washing oneself or dressing oneself, sure. But it's the specific theological application that makes it feel like architecture.
Look at Exodus 3:14. When God gives the divine name I am that I am, the Greek Septuagint translates this using ime, the middle voice.
Well, they had to translate it somehow. Aimai is the verb to be. It's the only tool in the box for that job.
But consider the fit. It's not just a translation, it's a locking mechanism. God identifies himself as the being that is self-contained, self-generating, the verb that contains its own fire. The middle voice is the only grammatical structure that perfectly mirrors the theology of aseity. The dissenter might say the translators were forced into it, but I say the language was waiting for them. It was prepared for that specific wait.
That is the pre-established harmony argument. You're saying the tool was built before the user even arrived. It's a poetic thought, but it's very hard to prove.
I am. And if you think the Greek and Hebrew connection is just parallel evolution, we have to look at the third piece of this puzzle. This is where the coincidence theory starts to buckle under the weight of the evidence. We need to talk about the Japanese connection.
I was waiting for this. This is the part of the source material that really pushes the boundary between analysis and, well, mysticism.
It does, but stick with the data. The essay describes a conversation where a connection is made to the Japanese word for love. The word is I.
Pronounced I.
Yes, phonetically identical to the ancient Greek suffix I that marks the middle voice.
Okay, stop. There are only so many sounds the human mouth can make. We have a limited set of phonemes. I is a very common diphthong. Finding a word in Japanese that sounds like a suffix in Greek is, statistically, that's not just probable, it's inevitable. It's like finding a cloud that looks like a dog. It doesn't mean the cloud is a dog.
If it were just the sound, I would completely agree with you. I sounds like I or I, fine. But it's not just the sound. It's the convergence of sound, meaning, and mathematics. The Japanese kanjis for I, the character itself, is written with exactly 13 strokes.
13.
13. Now hold that number. We turn to Hebrew gematria, the system where every letter corresponds to a number. In Hebrew, the word for love is ahava. Aleph, he, bet, he. Its value is 13.
Okay.
The word for unity, or one, is ehad. Its value is also 13.
I'm following the math.
Now look at the sum. Ahava, love, is 13. Ehad, unity, is 13. When you add them together, you get 26. 26 is the gematria value of the tetragrammaton, the four-letter divine name of God, Yahweh. So in Hebrew, the equation is literally love plus unity equals God.
And in Japanese?
In Japanese, the character for love is written with the number of strokes that equals love and unity in Hebrew, and it is pronounced I, the sound of the Greek middle voice.
That is startling. I will give you that. It's a triple convergence. You have the Greek sound, I, the Japanese writing, 13 strokes, and the Hebrew math, 13 equals love.
And the meaning. Don't forget the meaning. The Greek I marks the middle voice, interiority. The Japanese I means love. The Hebrew ahava means love. The systems are all pointing to the exact same thing. Love is the structure of interior self-sustaining being.
But I have to ask, how? I mean, how do you propose this happened? Japanese kanji are derived from Chinese characters, Hanzi, which evolved over thousands of years from oracle bone scripts. Are you suggesting that ancient Chinese scribes were somehow subconsciously influenced by Hebrew numerology to design a character with 13 strokes? I mean, that strains credulity.
I'm not suggesting that the scribes knew. I am suggesting the evolution was guided.
Guided by what?
By the ontological gravity of the concept itself. If love is a fundamental force of the universe, like gravity, then it bends the development of language around it. The source text calls it witness, not proof. It's a convergence that is too precise to be random. It's like finding a mathematical constant, like pi, showing up in the architecture of three different civilizations who never spoke to each other.
Witness is a convenient word when you lack causality. I'm looking for causality. This feels like apophenia. We are staring at white noise, millions of words, millions of stroke counts, millions of number combinations, and we are cherry-picking the one intersection that fits our narrative. If the kanji had 12 strokes, would we even be having this conversation?
If it had 12, it wouldn't match, but it does have 13.
But is that design or is that just the lottery? Someone has to win the lottery, but that doesn't mean the game was rigged for them. It just means they got lucky.
A lottery is random. This is a formal identity across 3 systems involving sound, number, and meaning. The probability is vanishingly small. And there is one more layer to this triple convergence that argues against it being random noise. We need to talk about structural literalism.
This is the heart held within argument from the text.
Yes, we've talked about the number 13 and the sound I. But look at the Japanese character itself. I is a logogram. It's a composition of smaller parts called radicals. And in the very center of the character is the radical for heart, kokoro.
I know the character. It's intricate. You have the claw radical on top, the roof, the walking legs at the bottom, and the heart is literally sandwiched in the middle of the stack.
It's not just sandwiched, it's held. The character structurally encloses the heart. Now, think back to the Greek middle voice. What did we say it does?
It describes an action where the subject is the site of the event, a closed loop.
Exactly. The middle voice is the grammar of interiority. The Japanese kanji is the architecture of interiority. It visually places the heart inside the structure. The visual matches the grammar.
So you have the Greek grammar saying, love is internal. You have the Japanese image saying, love is internal. And you have the Hebrew math saying, love is unity.
The synthesis is undeniable. The argument is that God is love isn't just a nice sentiment, it is an ontological claim supported by all 3 systems. God is not a being who loves. God is the middle voice structure of self-giving interiority. God is the heart held within.
I have to admit, that is a compelling image. The idea that God is love isn't just a sentence about God's emotions, but a description of his structure. That he is a self-sustaining fire of love, that's powerful theology. And seeing that mirrored in the kanji, it's poetic gold. It works on a literary level beautifully.
Is it just poetry, though? Or is it a glimpse of the code?
And that's the sticking point for me. I can appreciate the beauty of the heart held within without accepting that it was divinely scripted. Love is an intense internal emotion. It feels like it lives in the chest. So it's not surprising that the Japanese constructed a character that puts the heart in the middle. It's also not surprising that the Greeks developed a verb voice for internal states. These are human universals. We feel love inside, we build language to match. It's biology, not theology.
But that doesn't explain the number 13.
No, it doesn't. The number 13 is the anomaly. That's the piece that refuses to fit into the human universal box. Human universals don't account for specific stroke counts matching specific gematria values in a language thousands of miles away.
Because it's not a human universal. It's a specific code. The source text argues that this is non-accidental structure. The Japanese character for love didn't have to be 13 strokes to convey the meaning of heart inside. It could have been simplified. It could have been more ornate. It could have been 12 or 14. But it is 13, just as ahava is 13.
But Japanese isn't counting strokes to match Hebrew letters. The stroke count is a result of the radical composition history from Chinese. If you trace the etymology of the kanji I, it originally depicted a person sort of choking on their own emotions, a heart obstructed. It evolved into the form we have now.
And who guided that history? That's the question. If you believe history is random, then yes, it's a coincidence. If you believe, as the text suggests, that languages do not rupture, they inherit, and that this inheritance might be ontological rather than just linguistic, then you see preparation. You see a world where the word for love was always going to end up being 13 strokes because that's the number of unity.
You're suggesting that reality is rigged, that the game was fixed from the start, so that when we finally looked at these languages together, we'd find this equation.
I'm suggesting that the I am, the imai, is the ground of all being, including the being of language. The text ends with a powerful thought. The universe is not obligated to be tidy, but it is also not obligated to be meaningless.
I like that line, and I think it helps us find some common ground here.
How so?
Well, even if I remain skeptical about the divine script theory, and I do, I think the mechanisms of linguistic drift are messy and blind. I can agree that the study of these languages reveals a profound philosophy.
The Greek middle voice forces us to think about a mode of being that isn't transactional. It forces us to imagine a love that isn't about getting or taking, but about being the site of the action.
Yes. It moves us away from God loves me as a transaction to God is the act of love sustaining itself.
And the Japanese kanji reinforces that. It visualizes love as something precious kept at the center. Whether that's divine architecture or human wisdom, it's a truth worth holding. It teaches us something about how we should love, internally, sustainably, keeping the heart at the center.
I think that's fair. But I will press you on the number 13 one last time.
I know you will. And I'll admit, it's an itch I can't scratch. It's a vestigia, a trace. It's haunting. It's the kind of data point that keeps a scientist awake at night because it defies the model. It shouldn't be there, but it is.
It is haunting, and that's why I side with the position of witness. The probability of the sound, A, the number, 13, and the meaning, interiority, heart within, all converging by accident. To me, that requires more faith than believing it was designed. It's Occam's razor, but flipped. The simplest explanation for a perfect code is a coder.
See, I would frame it differently. I think the miracle isn't in the stroke count, but in the fact that humans, separated by oceans and millennia, keep circling the same fire. We keep trying to articulate this thing, this self-sustaining love. The Greeks did it with grammar. The Hebrews did it with numbers. The Japanese did it with ink. The convergence might be proof of our shared humanity, rather than a divine blueprint. We are all trying to draw the same face.
Or perhaps our shared humanity exists because we are made in the image of that blueprint. We are drawing the face because it is the face that is watching us.
Touché. That is the theological wager.
We are reaching the end of our time, but I want to summarize where we've landed. We've looked at 3 distinct systems. We have Greek morphology, the middle voice, which gives us the grammar of the self-contained loop.
We have Hebrew gematria, giving us the numerical equivalence of love and unity, 13 and 13 making the divine 26.
And we have Japanese orthography, giving us the visual of the heart held within, and the sonic match of I, all wrapped in that impossible 13-stroke package.
And while I maintain that rigorous linguistics prefers to see these as independent evolutions, parallel paths up the same mountain, I have to concede that the view from the top is singular. The concept of aseity, of a fire that burns without consuming, is central to how we understand the divine.
And I reject the coincidence theory in favor of witness. The convergence is too precise. It suggests that language is not just a tool we invented, but a terrain we are exploring. A terrain that was mapped out long before we arrived. The languages were prepared to carry the truth. Love is unity, and unity is the interior act of being.
And ultimately, whether you view it as architecture or accident, the result is the same. A deepened awe at the capacity of language to hold the ineffable. As the text says, every language conceals a philosophy.
Indeed, it turns out the grammar was doing theology all along. We just had to learn how to read the fossils.
And maybe count the strokes.
And count the strokes. Thank you for listening to the debate.
Keep questioning.
And remember the verb that contains its own fire. Goodbye.
I want you to try something for me, just in your head. Try to describe the feeling of falling in love. I mean, real earth-shattering love, but you can only use English grammar.
Oh, wow. Okay, we are starting with the impossible task today.
No, I'm serious. Think about it. You say, I love you. Simple. Subject. I. Verb. Love. Object. You. It's a transaction.
It is. It's linear. It's directional.
I'm the shooter, the love is the bullet, and, you're the target.
Right.
Or if you're on the other end of it, you say, I am loved. Now you're just the target. You're passive. But does that actually capture the experience of it?
Yeah.
That weird, swirling, all-consuming thing where the boundary between me and you just starts to dissolve.
Yeah.
Where the feeling is generated inside you, but it also feels like it's taking you over.
English really struggles with that. It's a structural problem. We have the active voice, I do the thing.
Right.
And we have the passive voice, the thing is done to me.
Right.
We don't really have a grammatical setting for I am participating in something that is also creating me.
And that frustration, that feeling that our language is just too small for our reality, That's exactly where we're starting this deep dive, because we've got a stack of research here that suggests this isn't just a vocabulary problem, it's a philosophy problem.
It really is. And to solve it, we have to go digging through what I can only describe as the fossil record of human consciousness.
Which is just a very fancy way of saying grammar.
It is a fancy way of saying grammar, but think about it. Grammar isn't just, rules about where to put a comma. It's a map. It's a map of how a civilization understands the universe. And today we're looking at a specific fossil, a verb form, that basically went extinct in English, but is alive and well elsewhere. That might actually explain the nature of God.
We are going to cover some serious ground today. I mean, we are starting with a single ancient Greek verb, then we're jumping into the architecture of Hebrew scripture.
Right.
And then, and I still don't quite know how you're going to justify this, we're ending up in the Japanese writing system.
It sounds like one of those conspiracy theory boards with the red string connecting everything I know. But the connection is there.
Yeah.
It's really there.
So the claim on the table is that these three completely distinct cultures, we're talking Athens, Jerusalem, and Kyoto, all independently converged on the exact same insight about what love actually is.
Yes.
And they didn't write it in their philosophy books, they hid it. They hid it in the actual mechanics of their language.
Or, as I prefer to think of it, they built a language that was capable of holding the truth.
Mm-hmm.
The truth was there, and the grammar was the vessel for it.
Okay, so just a heads up for you listening, we are going to do some math today, we are definitely going to do some linguistics, and we might accidentally do some theology along the way.
The best kind of deep dive.
Let's jump in. We have to start with the Greeks,
Right.
and with one specific word, eramai.
Eramai. It's a beautiful word.
Okay, so pull up your mental dictionary. If I look up eramai, the translation I get is I desire or I love. It's related to eros, which makes sense.
Right. And in English, desire is something you have. I have a desire for coffee. It's a possession, or it's an action. I desire coffee. Again, very linear.
But the Greeks, they were doing something much more sophisticated with the engineering of this word.
Oh, much more. If you break eramai down, it's like a three-part machine. You have the root, which is that's the spark, that's eros, the raw energy of attraction, of union.
Nice core idea.
Then you have the stem, am, that's just a thematic bridge. It connects that raw energy to a person. But the most important part, the part that changes everything, is the suffix, the ending.
Which is SAI.
Alpha iota, correct.
Mhm.
And that little two-letter tag, that AI, is the grammatical marker of the middle voice.
Okay, we need to park here for a second. The middle voice. This is the concept that really broke my brain a little bit when I was going through the prep materials. Because, as you said, English doesn't have this.
We don't. We lost it somewhere along the way.
We have active and passive. So let's do a quick refresher for everyone who, hasn't been in an English class since 8th grade. Active voice is, I kick the ball.
Right. You're the agent. The action flows outward from you, and it impacts something else. It's an extroverted action.
And passive voice is, the ball kicks me. Or, more naturally, I am kicked by the ball.
Now, you're the patient, the recipient. The action comes from the outside and happens to you. It's introverted, but in a kind of victimized way.
So broadly speaking, in English, you are either the master of the action or the victim of the action.
Exactly. It's a binary, a false dichotomy, really.
Yeah.
But the ancient Greeks, they looked at reality and said, that's not enough. There's a third way. They had this other option, the middle voice.
What does the middle voice do? What's the third option?
Well, the middle voice describes an action where the subject is still the agent.
Yep.
They're doing it. But the action, it curves back around. It affects the subject directly. It's a closed loop. The energy doesn't just go out. It circulates.
Can you give me an example? Like, if English did have a middle voice, what would it sound like?
That's the tricky part, because we have to use extra words to get there. But think about a phrase like, I settle down.
Okay.
Who's doing the settling? You are. But who is getting settled? You are. You aren't doing it to anyone else. You are performing an action that changes your own state of being. That's a middle voice idea.
Okay, that makes sense. Or maybe, I adapt. I am doing the adapting, but I'm also the one who is changing.
Yes, exactly. That's it. But in Greek, this wasn't just a turn of phrase. It was a specific grammatical conjugation, a setting on the verb. So when they said, eramai, I love, or I desire, using that middle voice ending, they were saying something incredibly specific about the physics of love.
They weren't just saying, I am shooting a ray of desire at you.
No, that would be active voice.
And they weren't saying, I am being crushed by a wave of desire.
Closer, but no, that would be passive. The middle voice implies, I am the site where desire is happening. The action is internal. It's self-contained.
I really like the image that the research notes use, the fire and the hearth.
It's the perfect analogy, I think. In the active voice, you're a flamethrower. You're shooting fire out.
Right.
In the passive voice, you're just a piece of wood getting burned by the fire. But in the middle voice, you are the fireplace. You are the hearth. You are holding the fire. You are the structure that allows the burning to exist, and the burning is warming you.
So eremai literally means I am the space where love is occurring.
Yes. Desire is happening inside me, as me, through me. It fundamentally changes the agency of it all. You aren't doing love like it's a task on a checklist. You are inhabiting love like it's a room.
That feels so much more true to the experience when you really deeply care about someone. It doesn't feel like a task you complete. It feels like a state of being you've entered.
And that's exactly why the Greek philosophers loved this voice. It allowed them to talk about the soul and consciousness in a way that wasn't just, mechanical.
But okay, here's where I have to play the skeptic for a minute. We're talking about ancient Greek. We're talking Homer, Plato, that whole crowd. But languages change. They evolve.
They absolutely do.
I mean, if you listen to someone speaking English from the year 1000, it sounds like Klingon.
Quet, we Gardena in Girdigam. Yeah, Beowulf is completely incomprehensible to a modern English speaker.
Right. So the source material makes this huge deal about the sound, that alpha iota ending. But didn't the pronunciation of that sound change over time?
It did.
In modern Greek, that diphthong isn't pronounced I like in sky anymore. It's pronounced A like in pet.
That's completely true. If you go to Athearn today and listen, the pronunciation has shifted. It's a linguistic phenomenon called ioticism. The vowel sounds all kind of drifted and merged.
So doesn't that break the theory? If the sound changed, did the meaning break with it?
And that's the brilliant part. The sound shifted, but the structure, the grammatical skeleton remained rock solid. This is a principle in linguistics called diachronic inheritance.
Diachronic inheritance. Okay, break that down.
It basically means that while the surface level of a language, the paint, the wallpaper, the vocabulary might get renovated over the centuries, the load-bearing walls tend to stay exactly where they are.
So the deep logic of the language persists.
The deepest logic. The way it encodes things like causation, time, and most importantly, personhood is incredibly conservative. It persists for thousands of years.
So you're saying even if a modern Greek speaker pronounces it differently, they're still grammatically using the middle voice?
They are. And this leads us to the most mind-blowing example of this survival, the verb to be.
I am.
In modern Greek, the word for I am is iam.
And it ends in.
It ends in my. It's a direct descendant of that ancient middle voice ending.
Wait a minute. So you're telling me that in Greek, the verb to be, the most basic concept of simple existence, is conjugated in the middle voice?
Exclusively.
Always. Okay, let's unpack the implications of that for a second. When I say I am in English, it's just a linking verb. I am tired. I am at the store. It's basically an equal sign.
It's a copula, yeah. It's static. It assigns a quality.
But if I am is middle voice in Greek, that means existence itself is viewed as an action.
An action that curves back on itself. A reflexive loop. A self-sustaining process.
I am the site where my own being is happening.
Yes, you got it. Being isn't a status that you are given from the outside. Grammatically speaking, it's an internal activity. It's a fire that feeds itself. To say I am, in Greek, is to say I am generating my own presence. Or maybe more accurately, I am the experience of my own existence.
That is an incredibly heavy philosophical concept for a word you use to order a gyro.
It is, but that's the point. You don't have to think about it when you're ordering the gyro. You just inhabit that reality. The philosophy is baked into the grammar. You don't have to be a philosopher to speak it. You just have to be Greek.
Wow. Okay, so we've established this grammatical container, the middle voice, this self-sustaining loop. Now we have to move geographically. We're leaving Athens and we're going to Alexandria, Egypt, about 300 years before Christ.
We're going to the translation of the Septuagint.
Set the scene for us. What was happening there?
So you have the Hebrew Bible, the Torah, the prophets, the writings, and you have this massive Jewish diaspora living in Egypt who, for generations, have spoken Greek, not Hebrew. They need a Bible they can actually read.
So a translation project.
A massive one. Legend says 70 scholars got together to translate the Hebrew scriptures into the common Greek of the day.
And this has to be the highest stakes translation job in history. You can't mess up the word of God.
Absolutely not. And they hit this massive conceptual hurdle when they get to the book of Exodus, chapter 3.
The burning bush.
The burning bush. Moses is standing there, barefoot, before a bush that is on fire, but it's not burning up. which, by the way, is a perfect visual metaphor for the middle voice.
Whoa, I hadn't even thought of that. The bush itself is a middle voice object.
It is. It's self-sustaining energy. It's a fire that is also its own hearth. And Moses asks the voice in the bush, "Who are you? What is your name? Who should I say sent me?"
And in English, the famous answer is, I am that I am.
Which is pretty cryptic, a bit of a riddle. But in the Greek translation, the Septuagint, those 70 scholars had to make a choice. How do you conjugate God's existence? What verb form do you use for a being that just is?
And they chose ego, I mean.
Ego, Amy. I am. They use that middle voice verb.
So purely by the rules of their grammar, they were defining God not as a thing that exists, but as a self-sustaining loop of existence.
Precisely. And this connects directly to a major theological concept called aseity.
Aseity, right. That's from the Latin esse, isn't it? From itself.
Exactly, from itself. Think of it this way. You and I, we're like lamps. If you unplug us, if you take away oxygen, food, water, sunlight, we go out. Our being is derived from other sources. We're contingent. We need a battery.
I am being by courtesy of pizza, basically.
Exactly. But God, in this theological framework, is not a lamp. God is the electricity. God has aseity. His being is derived entirely from within. He relies on nothing external to exist.
So God is the battery that charges itself.
In that very specific, very strange logic, I need nothing outside of myself to exist, is perfectly, almost mathematically, described by the Greek middle voice. The action starts with the subject and remains with the subject.
So when those translators picked that verb, they weren't just matching words from a dictionary, they were matching architectures. They found the one grammatical tool in the world that could accurately describe a God who is uncreated.
They were doing theology with grammar,
Yeah.
maybe without even fully realizing it.
And this pops up all over the New Testament too, right? Jesus uses this specific phrasing a lot.
Constantly. The I am statements in the Gospel of John are the most famous examples. Before Abraham was, I am, ego, I me.
And people usually get into fights about the timeline there. You know, he's saying he's really, really old.
But it's so much deeper than that. He's not just claiming seniority. He's claiming aseity. He is claiming to be a middle voice entity. It's as if he's saying, my existence is structural, not historical. I operate on a different existential plane.
There are a couple of other Greek verbs the researchers highlighted that I think are worth touching on. Menetai and karamai.
Ah, yes, menetai. It means abides or remains.
From the famous passage, abide in me and I in you, the vine and the branches.
And of course, it's middle voice. So abiding isn't just, standing still in a room. It's a mutual indwelling. It's an interior state that you enter into. You don't do abiding to someone. You enter the state of abiding, and it changes you.
And what about charamai?
Rejoice.
This one really changed how I read parts of the Bible, because rejoice is often given as a command. Rejoice in the Lord always. And I always used to think, well, that's unfair. You can't command an emotion. If I'm sad, I'm sad.
And if rejoice was an active voice verb, you'd be absolutely right. It would be an impossible command. But it's middle voice.
So what does that change about it?
It means that rejoicing is not a reaction to good news. It's not something good happened, therefore I am happy. That's simple cause and effect. The middle voice implies that joy is a stance. It's an internal orientation you choose to inhabit.
You joy yourself.
In a way, yes. You become the site where joy is happening, regardless of external circumstances. You become the hearth for that particular fire.
That is actually really helpful, psychologically helpful.
It restores your agency. You aren't just a victim of your mood. You are the vessel that contains it. You can choose which fire to tend.
Okay, so we've established that Greek grammar is this incredible, deeply philosophical toolkit. But as we know, the Old Testament wasn't originally written in Greek. It was written in Hebrew.
Right.
So the big question is, does Hebrew have a middle voice? Did this idea exist before the Greeks got a hold of it?
It does, but it looks totally different. Hebrew doesn't work with suffixes in the same way Greek does. It's a root-based language. It works more like a filter system. You have a three-letter root, let's say KDDH, which means holy, and you run that root through different grammatical stems or binyanim to change the meaning.
Like putting different filters on a photo to change the color and contrast?
That's a great analogy for it. Or it's like a Rubik's Cube. You have the core colors, but you twist the root into a new shape to get a new function. And there is one specific stem called the hit pale.
The hit pale.
The hit pale is the reflexive stem. It describes an action that the subject performs upon themselves.
Ah, so it's the loop.
It's the loop. It corresponds almost perfectly in its logic to the Greek middle voice. And what's fascinating is that when the Hebrew Bible talks about sanctification, The process of making yourself holy, it almost always uses this hip hail form.
So you don't get sanctified by some external zap magic. And you don't really sanctify other people, you sanctify yourself.
You participate in the process of becoming holy. It's an internal restructuring that you undertake. So both Hebrew and Greek, the two lungs of the Bible, fundamentally agree that the most important spiritual actions are middle voice actions. They are internal. They are self-implicating.
Okay. I'm with you so far. That all makes a kind of historical and geographical sense. You've got neighbors, you've got shared history, similar theological complexity.
It's a solid academic argument up to this point.
But now we have to go completely off the map, because the next piece of evidence you brought in comes from an island nation on the other side of the Eurasian landmass that had absolutely zero contact with Moses or Plato.
We're going to Japan.
This is where I need you to be very, very clear with me. Are we saying there's a linguistic link? Did a Greek guy row a boat to Kyoto in 500 BC?
No, absolutely not. Let's be crystal clear about that. Linguistically, there is no relation whatsoever. Japanese is what we call an isolate. It has nothing to do with Indo-European languages like Greek or Semitic languages like Hebrew.
So what we are about to discuss is what? A coincidence. A freak accident of phonetics.
I'd call it a phenomenological convergence. Or, if you want to be a bit more poetic, a rhyme in the fabric of reality.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes two people on opposite sides of the world invent the same tool because it's the only tool that actually works for that problem.
Okay, let's look at the tool then. We've been talking this whole time about this specific Greek sound, ai, the alpha iota, the sound of the middle voice, the sound of internal love.
Right.
What is the Japanese word for love?
The word is a.
Pronounced.
ei, exactly like the Greek suffix.
Okay. Okay, so that's a phonetic coincidence, like I, the body part, and I, the pronoun. There are only so many sounds human mouths can make. It's bound to happen.
It is. And if it stopped there, it would just be a fun fact for trivia night. Linguists call them false friends, words that sound alike but have completely different origins.
But you're saying it doesn't stop there, because Japanese isn't just a spoken language, it's a written one.
Using kanji.
And kanji are logograms. They aren't just letters, they are pictures that represent whole ideas. And they're built out of smaller pictures called radicals.
Correct. Each character is a composite image.
So if we take a magnifying glass and we dissect the character for love, what do we find inside?
This is where it gets spooky. The character is a vertical stack of different shapes. At the very top, you have a radical that implies breathing into or gathering. At the bottom, you have radicals that mean legs or movement. But in the dead center, sort of trapped inside the cage of the character, is one specific crucial shape.
And that shape is?
It's the radical for kokoro, the heart.
The heart.
The symbol for mind, heart, spirit is literally framed inside the character for love.
So let me try to visualize this for everyone listening. The Greek grammar says, love is an action curving back into the self. And it sounds like AA. The Japanese writing says, the word for love sounds like A, and the picture for it is the heart held inside the self.
They're describing the exact same architecture. One does it with sound and grammar, the other does it with ink and geometry. But the fundamental conclusion is identical. Love is an interior condition. It is the act of holding the heart within a sustaining structure.
That is, I'm a natural skeptic, but that is genuinely beautiful. It's like they both saw the same invisible elephant and just drew it from two completely different angles.
That's the convergence theory in a nutshell. That love might actually have a real shape in the universe, and if you look at it clearly enough, you'll end up drawing a box with a heart in it, or you'll create a verb that loops back on itself.
But we aren't done with the Japanese connection. And this is where the author's addendum in our notes gets into the math.
Yes, gematria.
Now, I have to put up a big warning sign for the listener here. Gematria, the practice of assigning numbers to words, can get very conspiracy theory very fast. You know, Monster Energy drink is secretly the devil because of the letter M, that kind of stuff.
It can be abused, definitely. Yeah. But in the ancient Hebrew tradition, it wasn't a parlor trick. It was a serious method of exegesis, a way of seeing hidden connections. Because Hebrew letters are also their numbers. Aleph is 1, Bet is 2. They didn't have separate set of numerals, so every single word had a numerical sum.
Okay, so let's run the numbers. Let's stick with Japanese for just one more second. To write that character for love, I have to use a set number of brush strokes.
Right. There's a standard official stroke order.
How many strokes does it take to write love?
You can count them up, top to bottom. 1, 2, 3. It is exactly 13 strokes.
13. Okay, everybody hold that number in your head. 13. Now, let's fly back to the Middle East. Let's go to Hebrew. The primary Hebrew word for love is ahava.
Hava. That's spelled Aleph Hey Bet Hey.
Walk us through the math. I want the listener to actually see this calculation.
Okay, let's visualize the letters and their values. The first letter is Aleph. That's the number 1. The second letter is Hey. That's the number 5. The third letter is Bet. That's the number 2. And the fourth letter is Hey again. So that's another 5.
So 1 plus 5 plus 2 plus 5.
That equals 13.
So the numerical value of love in Hebrew is 13. And the physical effort required to write love in Japanese is 13 strokes.
And the phonetic sound of the Japanese word matches the Greek grammatical marker for interiority.
Okay, that's 3 separate data points from 3 separate civilizations, all pointing at the same spot. But there's one more layer to the number 13, isn't there?
There is. In Hebrew, there is another incredibly important keyword that also sums to 13. The word is echad,
Which means?
1. As in the Shema prayer, the Lord our God is one. It means unity.
So mathematically, according to gematria, love, which equals 13, is the same as unity, which equals 13.
They are the same frequency, the same value. To love is to create unity. To create unity is to love. The math insists that they are identical concepts seen from different angles.
And if you put them together?
This is the grand sum. This is the big one. If you take love, 13, and you add it to unity, 13.
You get 26.
And 26 is arguably the holiest number in all of Judaism. It is the sum of the Tetragrammaton, Yud-Hey Vav-Hey, YHWH, the unpronounceable name of God.
So, love plus unity equals God.
Or, to reverse the equation,
Yeah.
the very nature of God is composed of the interplay between love and unity.
And this whole theological equation, this deep mystical math, is somehow mirrored in the stroke count of a Japanese character that just happens to sound like a Greek grammatical suffix.
It's dizzying, isn't it?
It is. It makes you feel like reality is drafted. You know, like there's an architect somewhere who just loves these little Easter eggs.
The source notes have a beautiful way of putting this. It calls it witnessing. It's not about proof or conspiracy. It's the idea that the universe is just saturated with truth. You can't escape it. If you're Greek, you'll find it in your verbs. If you're Japanese, you'll find it in your brushstrokes. If you're Hebrew, you'll find it in your numbers.
It's that line from the Gospels, if they keep quiet, the rocks will cry out.
Exactly. The truth of aseity, of this self-sustaining interior love, is pressing in from all sides, using whatever medium is available.
So we've built this massive interconnected picture. God is a middle voice fire, love is an interior structure, the math all lines up, but
Yeah.
so what?
So what is always the right question to ask.
I mean, that's fascinating, but I still have to go to work tomorrow. I still have to sit in traffic and get annoyed. How does knowing that God is a loop actually help me in my life?
I think it radically changes the most fundamental religious activity that humans do. It changes how we understand prayer.
Let's talk about the grammar of prayer, because most of us, if we're being totally honest, pray in the active voice.
Oh, absolutely. Dear God, please change my boss's mind. Dear God, please fix my bank account. Dear God, please make it not rain on Saturday.
It's a cosmic vending machine. I put in a coin, my prayer, I push a button, and I expect a product to drop out. It's purely transactional.
And when the product doesn't drop, we get angry. We kick the machine. God isn't listening. This whole thing is broken.
So how does the Bible grammatically describe the act of prayer? Let's start with the Greek.
In Greek, the verb is prosikomai.
And let me guess the ending on that one.
It's omai. It is a middle voice verb.
So to say I pray is not I ask for something, it's what is it?
The root has a sense of exchange or alignment. So I pray means something more like I place myself into a condition to be changed, or I offer myself up for exchange. It implies that the person praying is the one being acted upon.
So the primary goal of prayer isn't to change the world outside of you, it's to change the self inside of you.
Primarily, yes. It is an act of alignment. You're not trying to divert the river, you're stepping into the stream.
And the Hebrew is even more intense on this point, right?
The Hebrew verb is lehitpalel, and it's in that hitpale stem, the reflexive one we talked about, the loop.
And what's the root of that word?
The root is balal. It means to judge.
To judge.
So literally, grammatically, when a Jewish person says, I pray, they're saying, I judge myself.
Whoa. That is a million miles away from Jesus take the wheel. That is, I am putting myself on the witness stand.
It's a self-audit. It's the act of looking in the mirror and asking, am I aligned with reality? Am I aligned with love and unity? Where am I out of tune?
That sounds, frankly, a little terrifying, but also much more mature.
It's grown-up spirituality. It moves beyond begging for magic and into the realm of consenting to surgery.
Surgery, I like that.
You step into the middle voice, into the fire of God's presence, and you say, burn away the parts of me that aren't love. Burn away the parts of me that aren't unity.
Which brings us all the way back to the concept of metanoia.
Repentance, which we think of as feeling sorry for what you did, but it literally means a change of mind, a transformation of your inner structure.
It really seems like all of this, the Greek grammar, the Japanese kanji, the Hebrew math, it's all pointing to the exact same thing, that the universe is built on a specific frequency, and that frequency is self-giving, interior love.
The frequency of aseity.
And our entire job, our only real job maybe, is to tune ourselves to that frequency.
To enter the middle voice. To become the hearth that can hold the fire without being consumed by it.
It completely changes how you think about the words you use every day.
It absolutely should.
I'll leave you with this challenge. The next time you say I am, just for a split second, remember you aren't just stating a static fact. You are performing a middle voice miracle. You are actively generating your own presence in the world.
And when you say I love, remember the kanji. Remember that you are building a structure, a safe place for your heart to dwell in.
And when you pray, maybe just for a minute, stop asking for things and instead judge yourself, align yourself.
Step into the loop.
It's just amazing to think that we carry this ancient, profound wisdom around in our mouths every single day just by speaking the language we were taught as children.
We are all walking antiquities. We just need to learn how to read the map that we're already holding.
Yes, the philosophy hidden in grammar. I think we found it.
I really think we did.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. Now go out there and build your hearth.
Have you ever stopped to think about grammar? I mean, really think about it. What if all those rules aren't just rules? What if hidden deep inside the very structure of a language, there's a secret philosophy, a kind of fossil record of how an entire civilization once saw the world? Well, today, we're going to go looking for one of those secrets. And this is the big idea we're chasing. Grammar isn't just about building a proper sentence. It's like an archaeological dig into the human mind. The way a verb works, or how a tiny little suffix can change everything. These are clues. They're ancient intuitions about who we are, what cause and effect mean, and even about existence itself, just sitting there, waiting for us to notice. All right, so let's dive right in. We're going to start with a single, really powerful clue from ancient Greek. It's a word that looks pretty simple on the surface, but it's holding an entire worldview inside of it. Okay, so here's our word, eramai. You might know its root, eros. Now, most people would translate this as I desire or I am in love. And that's not wrong, but it completely misses the real story. The secret here isn't in what the word means, but in how the word is actually built. The whole secret is packed into this tiny little ending right here, A. Just 2 letters, alpha and iota. But this is where all the magic happens. This isn't just some grammatical decoration. It's a signal. It tells us precisely where the action of desire is taking place. And trust me, it's not where you might think. And that little ending is the key that unlocks this whole thing. It points us to a fascinating grammatical concept called the middle voice. Now, we've pretty much lost this in modern English, but for the ancient Greeks, it was absolutely fundamental. So what is the middle voice? Well, think of it like a self-contained circuit. The action doesn't shoot outward to affect some other object. It all happens within the subject. So to say "arimai" wasn't just I love someone. It was more like saying I am the site of love. The self is both the fire and the hearth that holds it. And this makes the difference really clear, right? In the active voice, I stop the cart. The action flows out from me to the cart. In the passive, the cart is stopped by me. The cart receives the action. But the middle voice, that's the closed loop. I stop myself. The action begins and ends with me. Nothing escapes into the outside world. Now, this is where it gets truly profound, because this idea of an inward-facing action, it wasn't just for feelings like love or desire. The Greeks used it to talk about the very nature of existence itself. Yeah, the Greeks used this very special grammatical tool for something way more fundamental than just emotions. They used it for the most basic assertion a person can possibly make, something we all say every single day. That's right, the Greek verb for I am, is a middle voice verb. And look at that ending. It's our old friend, I, the exact same signature we saw in the word for desire.
This is no coincidence. This is the grammatical foundation of how they understood what it means to be.
So just think about the implication. In the very architecture of the Greek language, being is not a static fact. It's an active, internal, self-sustaining process. To say I am is to declare that you are the very place where existence is happening. I mean, that alone is pretty incredible, right? But what if this isn't just some strange quirk of ancient Greek? What if we find echoes of this exact same idea, even the same sound, in languages from completely different parts of the world that had no contact with each other?
It sounds impossible, doesn't it? I mean, how could a tiny grammatical suffix from one ancient language find a meaningful echo in a totally separate one? Well, you might want to buckle up.
And there it is, the same sound. In Japanese, the word for a deep, profound kind of love is I. It's phonetically identical to the Greek suffix that tells us an action is happening inside the self. But the connections, they don't stop there. So now let's jump to a third, totally separate tradition. In the ancient mystical system of Hebrew gematria, every letter of the alphabet also corresponds to a number, and in this system, two absolutely core concepts are linked in a fascinating way. Both the word for love, ahava, and the word for unity, echad, add up to the number 13. Now, in Hebrew numerology, that's not a coincidence. It's a kind of theological equation, saying that love and oneness are really two sides of the very same coin. Okay, so keep that number 13 in your head. Let's bring that numerical thread all the way back to our Japanese character for love, I. Because beyond just its sound, its very structure, how it's drawn, holds another piece of this incredible puzzle. 13 strokes. The exact same number that represents both love and unity in Hebrew is the number of strokes it takes to write the character for love in Japanese. A character which, remember, is pronounced with the sound that marks interiority in Greek. Let's just pause for a second and appreciate this. We have a three-way echo across three ancient cultures with no direct linguistic connection. They all seem to be pointing to the same equation. A sound, a number, and a character are all converging on this shared idea about what love and being are all about. As amazing as that is, this convergence goes even deeper. The most beautiful piece of this puzzle is hidden in plain sight, right in the middle of the Japanese character itself. That's right, the character for heart is literally contained inside the character for love. It's not just a symbol for love, it's a diagram of it. It visually represents the exact same idea that the Greek middle voice expresses grammatically, that love is an action held within, an interior condition.
So, what does this all mean? How can three totally separate systems, Greek grammar, Hebrew numerology, and Japanese kanji, all land on the same structural principle? Let's tie all these incredible threads together.
You see, this isn't just a collection of cool coincidences. It's one single idea. This principle of interiority, of unity, of a self-contained being, expressed through three completely different modes. A grammatical voice, a numerical value, and a visual character are all telling us the exact same story. So is it possible that these are all just random patterns that our brains are projecting onto language? Or could it be that we're witnessing something more intentional, a kind of deep architecture embedded in language itself, waiting for us to notice? The source material doesn't claim to have the final answer. It just invites us to witness the pattern. And now, so have you.